Good morning. Welcome to another session of the Alabama Digital Modes training. Today we're going to be talking about Winlink Express setup and configuration. We're going to take you through a few other little side notes there having to do with hardware configurations and computer COM ports. So ride along with us here, and hopefully it'll help you get set up. Wanted to kind of give you an idea where we're going with this particular presentation. We're going to discuss Winlink hardware differences between the packet HF and the different HF applications. And we're going to go through computer ports and settings, and that's where the biggest majority of the problems occur with Winlink usage. Basic Winlink setup, then we're going to do packet Winlink setup, RDOP Winlink, Vera Winlink, and then do a live demo. So that's where we're going with this particular presentation. On this first slide, I wanted to show you the basic hardware setup for Winlink 2-meter packet. The Winlink application itself has no way of keying your radio, so it puts the data on the TCP/IP bus on a particular port and sends that data to another application running in the background, and that's called a software TNC. A software TNC, whether it's Sound Modem, Vera, AGWPE, Direwolf, and a number of others, takes the data, encodes it into AX25, and sends it off to some kind of hardware audio interface via USB. Now, that hardware audio interface could be a signal link or a variety of other hardware interfaces. It also could be the built-in audio port and TNC in your transceiver. So that's the method for keying your radio and exchanging audio in and out. This is the configuration for Winlink HF on a newer transceiver. You'll see that the transceiver uses a USB port. It's a single port, but it's shared between radio control and the software TNC data that's been encoded and sent to the receiver's audio interface. So the Winlink will send TCP/IP-based encoded data to the computer's hardware layer. That computer's hardware layer then sends information from the software TNC and from the radio control application over to the newer transceiver, and you can effectively control the frequency of the radio and key it, and you have the audio in and out. On the older transceivers, you can establish CAT control through a serial port in the back of the radio, and the Winlink application does essentially the same thing, except instead of sending it out to the CAT control and audio interface via USB, there is no audio interface in the transceiver, so it uses the hard computer in and out speakers and mic on a computer, and it takes the USB data and through a serial converter, USB to serial converter, converts that USB data to CAT control and PTT. So you use the speakers out and the mic in from the old transceiver, and that's how you manipulate the audio in and out for Winlink HF. I wanted to take a few minutes to discuss COM ports and audio settings, but before we do that, I think we need to connect to make sure we have our hardware connected. So for the newer transceivers, turn it on and connect the USB cable from the computer to the transceiver's audio port. For older transceivers or external hardware audio interfaces like signal links, just connect the interface that goes from the signal link to the computer at this time. That should be all you need to do. Also for older receivers, you'll have to connect, of course, two audio cables, one from speakers out on the computer to audio in on the transceiver, and mic in on the computer to speakers out on the transceiver. and then you'll need some kind of interface to switch PTT. Let's see, we're going to make sure that Winlink is installed. Also, make sure you have a software TNC installed, such as Vera FM or Vera HF. If you're going to use RDOP HF, which is native to Winlink Express, the software TNC is already installed. So with that in mind, do all those things and get prepared. And we want to have a little discussion on how to check your audio settings and your COM ports. One of the first things we want to do is make sure that we know which COM ports are available on our computer for audio interfaces and also for cat control. Basically, they show up as Silicon Labs if you're using the drivers for the newer ICOM machines. If you're using an older transceiver with a USB to serial converter, they'll usually be a prolific driver, but you need to take note of the ports that are available on your machine and know which ones are which, because we will need that information later on. So before we continue on with our setup, we want to make sure that we have our sound settings on our computer correct for what we're trying to accomplish. So let's go down to the far right corner to the speaker icon and right click it and click on Open Sound Settings. Here you're going to see the currently chosen output for sound off your computer, which in my case is the USB audio codec, and that is my signal link. I'm going to change that over to my headset. If you look down here, I'm currently on my headset, or else you couldn't hear me. But I also want to choose the USB audio codec for my signal link. So both of these should be set on my signal link, and I have to leave it on headset or else you can't hear me. But in order to use your audio interface, this must be set to USB audio codec, and that USB audio may be your signal link. It may be a standard ICOM internal transceiver audio interface. If you're using the older transceivers and you don't have an audio interface, you're just using cables, then you would set both of these to the standard speaker output, and down here for your input device you'd choose the standard mic. And that would be the two cables you would plug into your transceiver. So speakers out would go to your microphone input on your transceiver, and microphone input would go to your speakers out on your transceiver. So it's imperative that you check both of those. I also would make sure that all the rest of the devices are disabled. You can do that by going up here to Manage Sound Devices, and over here you can click on these and disable anything that you're not going to use. So I would disable, if I was going to use my signal link, I would disable the speakers and I would disable the audio device. You just need to click on them and click disable. Do the same thing with all your input devices. If you've got 4 input devices and you're just using your signal link, shut off everything except the USB audio codec. So just a few things to make sure that you get your audio correct before we continue. One additional thing we need to do before we set up Winlink is to make sure that our computer sounds are off. So we want to go down to the Start menu, Control Panel, and we want to go to Sound. And then I want you to go up here to where it says Sounds. Click on that and make sure this sound scheme says No Sounds. If it says Windows, then every time your Windows you click on an icon or it makes a ding or it makes a sound, it's going to key your audio interface and key your transmitter, and you'll be putting out illegal emissions. So make sure your Windows sounds are off. So let's go ahead and open up Winlink. So if I go off screen here, double click the desktop shortcut, brings up Winlink. Looks like a normal email program. That's because it is. It just has some special functions. First thing we want to do is up here on the left, you should see your call sign in this particular location. Next thing we do is we want to go to settings and then Winlink Express setup and take a look in here. So first thing you want to do is make sure your call sign is correct in here. Make sure you have a recovery password, a password recovery email, excuse me. Make sure that is correct. Put in your password. That should be in there. If you forget this password, you can go on to the Winlink website and request a password recovery, and it will be sent to this email address. So make sure that is a viable address. Down in the grid square, make sure that's filled in. I have a license for Winlink. That's what's shown here. You do not need one. If you don't have a license, just leave that blank and you'll get a nag screen, and just go forward and do an OK on the nag screen. Service codes, make sure the service codes say public. That's going to show you all of the active channels in your around your grid square. Over here, we want to make sure that you get a display list of all of your pending incoming messages, and the reason for that is if you are in an active deployment, you may have a tremendous number of emails coming in. You may not want to download all of them for expediency, so you can choose those once they're displayed. So make sure that checkbox is checked. On here, you can, if you see fit, you can put your information in here for public record. So that's all on this screen. Hit update. Next thing we want to do is want to move to the right a little bit. I'll go back to settings here for a second. There's a tremendous amount of information in here, and at future presentations we'll try to get into each and every one of those and show you some of the high-level things that you can do with Winlink that make it way better than a normal email program. You can go to messages and take a look at that. That tab shows you new messages, reply to all the typical things from a standard email program. Next, we want to move on to you can move information and saved items, move email messages coming in. You can save those to all of your different inboxes. Again, we got to delete, and the next thing we want to look at is this open session and this blank box, or this box right here. That determines what functionality in Winlink you're going to be using for your transmission. You've got a variety of things in there. Starting at the top, you've got Telnet, which you can utilize if you've only got an internet connection. Then of course you've got Packet Winlink, Packet Tor, if you've got a PackTor modem. You've got Robust, AirDop, Vera, and Vera FM. We're going to do Packet Winlink. It is not Vera, and you do not want to have Vera in there. So put Packet Winlink. That's the standard method for operations under 2 meters. Make sure that that is located in there. Next thing we want to do is go to Open Session, and it will open up a Packet Winlink session. It'll also open up your defined software TNC. We'll get to that here in a second. But you'll notice here that I have a open session screen, and it gives me some information here that it's opening the sound modem software TNC, and also see back here we have the software TNC running. So you need to make sure that you check a few things here in this open session. So let's go to settings, and under settings you'll see the typical layout for KISS for the TNC type. The TNC model is normal. You want to make sure that you have serial port as TCP, and the serial port listed is your local host, which is 127.0.0.1, but that all important port number, which is 8100. Also, you'll notice in here we have a location for your software TNC. This is the path on your computer to the exec file for that TNC, and mine is listed in there. And you want to check this box that says automatically launch it. That way when you open a session, you'll also launch the software TNC in the right order so that you can have a Winlink session. Next thing you want to do is do an update, and we'll have the software TNC restart here because I updated, and we should be ready for a session. But before we do that, the next thing we want to do, I want you to go to channel selection, and on that channel selection you'll see a bunch of stations, and it may or may not have the local closest repeater to you listed. So make sure you go up here and do an update the table via the internet. We'll do that here, and it takes a real quick update, and it shows you all of the stations that are closest to the grid square that you put in and out of the public folder. So that's important that you update that, and then choose in this list, choose the repeater that you want to contact. In my case, I'm going to choose N4HSV, double click that, and it appends that call sign into this block. That's the block that you're going to be calling. So you should be able to do that. Once that is done and it says that you're ready over here, you should be able to start and initiate a session. Now that we're all set up and ready to go with our first session, it's time to create our first test message. So let's go up here to the new message icon, which is this icon right over here in the upper left, or you can go to message, new. So let's go to a new message. So this is a standard email program, except that the recipients can be members of winlink.org, or they could be a standard email address, also a email address to a cell phone. So let's send a message here to KM4CJ. Get the right keys here. And if I want to add someone else to that, to the email, I put it in a colon, and then I'll put my address. And of course a subject line. And now that we've got our message created, we've got two recipients here. Now you notice that KM4CJ, I just put his email, his call sign, and the reason I did that is he is a member of winlink.org. So as long as he's a member, you do not have to put KM4CJ at winlink.org. It will append that as required. All the rest of the addresses have to be a legitimate email address with a URL to go to. So after we've created this message, if you go up here to the upper left, you'll see post to the outbox. So we'll do that now. Now if you come down here, you'll see there's one message in the outbox to send when we do our our live check, and we'll go on from there. Now that we've successfully made a Winlink VHF FM packet connection and downloaded our emails, which you see up here at the top in the yellow inbox, all of those were made during the last connection. I think I'll open a session of Vera FM Winlink and let you see what that looks like, and see if we can't connect up to a Vera repeater. The Vera repeater here in Huntsville is about 180 degrees out from where I was with the VHF packet. So let's open a session. And when we do that, we get the Vera FM sound modem screen that comes up. We also get the connectivity screen that says it's ready, and you'll notice that we're going to have to put in a Vera FM station, KY4G-10. That is the only Vera configured station in Huntsville right now. So let's see if we can connect with him. So I will stop this session now. I have to turn the headsets off to get it to start. So that was the issue there. So I will get off of the headset here. The next screen you see will be the connectivity screen with no audio. Well, that was a quick Vera FM check, and because I had downloaded all my messages via VHF FM packet, I had no messages to download via Vera. One thing I wanted to make sure that you understand that the Vera sound modem here under settings has to be set up the same way that you set up sound modem, where you got to have the correct sound card chosen and those types of things. So make sure you set these up properly. And same thing with in the session itself. Check the settings under session and make sure that you designate opening the Vera FM exec file, just like we did in the VHF packet. One last thing about Vera FM packet. If you go under in the Vera software modem and go under settings, you'll see this screen, and you'll notice at the top it says narrow and my call sign and my registration key. In order to achieve 9600 baud, a couple of things has to happen. Number one, you need to register your copy of Vera, and then you can use the 9600 baud rate. Your radio has to be set up for it. The repeater has to be set up for it. And where it says FM system, you would change that to wide. That's the only way you can achieve a full 9600 baud rate. However, the baud rates are very, very good, even if you do not choose to buy a license and use a 9600 baud rate repeater setup. We're going to move on and do some HF Winlink now. And the first one we're going to do is HF using the RDOP native software modem built into Winlink. And before we do that, going to have to make a couple of decisions. There's two ways to do it. You can either use rig control automatically set up by Winlink, or if you don't want to or have a machine that is capable of rig control, you can set the manual configuration also. And you need to check the stations that are available to you, closest to you, for the HF connection. And then you need to set up the RDOP software modem, and then once that's done, you should be able to connect to the HF station. So we're going to go through these each one separately, and then we'll do a demonstration. So the first thing we want to do is open up Winlink, and then up at the top, the right hand side, make sure you check and click on RDOP Winlink. RDOP, by the way, stands for Amateur Radio Digital Open Protocol. Winlink had something similar, but it was proprietary, so they rewrote the software and created their own software modem. So now that you see this screen right here and it says RDOP Winlink, I want you to open session. You should get a couple of screens like you see here. And in my case, we're green here. But it says, if you notice down here in the Winlink box, RDOP Winlink session, and it's using my radio COM6 38,400 baud, waiting for the TNC, and then of course ready to start calling. So if I wanted to go ahead and call now, I could. But before we do that, we have a couple of settings within the software TNC that we have to configure. Let's go to File and Virtual TNC Setup. Up here at the top, you're going to see Hard Host Interface. This should be automatic, where it's local host and port is 8200. You've got the ability to set up your radio here, but we're going to do that differently. What you want to do here is make sure that you set up the TNC parameters. And with that, you're going to have to choose the software TNC audio sources just like you would if you were using your signal link in FM packet. So right now I am using my signal link, and the sources are set up for sound card, USB audio codec, and for the mic USB audio codec. Most of the other settings within here you can leave at default, but make sure you have enable TNC radio control checked here in this box. Once that's done, hit save to file, then go back to file and go to optional radio setup. And here, make sure that you have USB and the PTT control is Vox or Signal Link. Now you can use your radio if it's capable of running software audio through the radio itself with a built-in software interface. Audio interface. Again, enable TNC control, radio PTT. Check that box. Save to file. Once you've got that done, you should be green here and ready to go. We will continue on here on the next slide. Once we have the RDOP software TNC set up with our audio sources from our computer, we need to set up the radio interface and then do a channel selection for who we want to contact. So let's go to Settings, RDOP TNC Setup. This should be standard. Just make sure the key thing here is localhost, which is the 127 IP address, and the port is 8200. That's the only thing you have to do there. And if you want, you can show the RDOP screen when launched, but this is default. So just go ahead and update that, and it will come back up again. Now I want you to go back up to Settings, choose Radio Setup, and here is where I've connected cat control from Winlink to my radio. So you notice I have my FT950 Yaesu chosen here. I've chosen USB. Here's my COM port, which is 6. My baud rate, enable RTS and DTR both are checked. And then the PTT optional is external. Make sure that is the setup that you put in so that your software TNC is doing the PTT control and not some other instance. Once you've done that update, and all these screens will return to normal. Next thing we want to do is find out what's the best station for us to connect to. So once it's done loading itself back up and it says it's ready to start calling, go up here to Channel Selection. Click on Channel Selection. You're going to see a screen that shows you a bunch of stations, a bunch of probability of path connections, and you may see this this screen here, which is the SFI solar flux index has changed. And do a yes to this, and you should connect to the internet, and it should update all of these stations and their probability of connection. So let's do an update. You'll notice up here it's going to the internet and it's checking all of the HF RDOP capable stations and what their probability is. And it'll take a short period of time to run through all of the stations. There's probably at any one time 600 or 700 stations to check. So it didn't take very long there. And you'll notice that for me, I've got a 65% through 85% probability of connecting to these stations right here. In addition to that, we have the frequency itself that we need to connect to. So if we click on this station AB4NX, it's highlighted for me as my best probable chance, and it's 126 miles away and it's on 40 meters. So if I double click that, it will load that station's call sign into Winlink, the center frequency of the connection, and the dial frequency my radio is on. It gives me the bearing and the quality of the connection. Now that means that you will have to make sure you are tuned on 40 meters before you start the connectivity. I am not tuned up right now. I will come back here at the end of this dissertation, tune up on 40 meters, and we'll do a connection. But once you've done your channel selection, before you hit start, make sure you are tuned up on these frequencies. Also check and make sure that your radio has a dial frequency that's equal to what's listed here, so that you get the upper and lower sideband frequencies proper. So do that check, and we'll get back on the next slide and continue on with the demonstration. Before I go on and do the demonstration, I did want to mention that the only difference between cat control and no cat control are these three boxes. So if you want to run cat control, hook it up with your COM port and your radio, and when you double click on the station, these will be appended to the right numerical values. If you want to do a manual, then you just go back to the chart. Let's see here, channel selection. Go back to this chart and you'll see the call sign and the frequency here. But if you double click this call sign, it will put these values in here. Make sure that your radio is on upper sideband, and this is the dial frequency on upper sideband, the one that has been listed here. If you do that, then you should be all set. So I'm going to change the audio settings here, and then we can do a demonstration. The last step that we take to use Vera HF is very similar to the rest of the setup. First thing we want to do is open a session, and when we open a session, it's going to launch Vera, and the setup for Vera and the rest of these things is the same as it has been. If I go to Vera under settings, Vera setup, you'll see that it's got my name and my reference key, and it's got the ports. Let me move this down. It's got the port that'll be used, my call sign, and because it's registered, I have a registration key. All this is default, Make sure that you're using the KISS interface. Close that. Go back to settings. Go to sound card. And of course right now I'm on the Logic, my headset, but you'll notice it already has Signal Link in both of these reference points. Make sure that that is correct. And also check your ALC. Close that. If I go to the session window of Winlink, I can go to settings. I go to Vera TNC up here. This will populate if you're using Vera HF. Vera TNC shows that I'm using the localhost IP address. I'm using that 8300 port that we had just discussed. One of the things that you want to make sure is that this file path to the Vera executive file is correct, and then make sure that you automatically open it, and this is default. Then do an update. And of course it'll go ahead and update. You can start this session now. I don't know if it'll run concurrent, but we'll give it a try. See if we can run it concurrently with recording here. So let's try that. So it is running. Whether or not it'll connect. Yes, it did connect. Okay. So we did make a connection. Same station, AB4NX over in Georgia. I shouldn't have any email traffic because I checked it in the earlier version. So while we wait for this to finish, both the RDOP and the Vera HF can be very difficult to connect depending on where you are. So take your time, look at the propagation settings, and choose the correct station. You may have to choose a station that's close but a different frequency to get it to connect. So make sure you try that if you're having difficulty. So it looks like we've connected. We should be disconnecting here momentarily. There's the end of the session. So that's the basics of Vera FM, very similar to RDOP FM. Thank you for being patient with this long training video. Got one last thing here I wanted to go over very quickly, and it is used on FM packet or HF packet, and that is the standardized forms. Standardized forms are necessary for NIMS compliant transmissions, and also is quite beneficial to be able to open the message in a browser and print it directly from the browser and hand it to your served agencies. So in order to do that, we come up here. This is the new message icon, or you can go to message, new message. So let me click on this icon. So we have a new message form that comes up here. Let me put in first the recipient, which in this case will make KM4CJ. Once we've done that, it's just a general standardized message. So I want to go to templates. You've got standard templates, global templates, and any templates you may have created and saved would be under my personal templates. Let's go to the plus sign on standard templates, and then you'll see down here in the middle a plus sign in ICS forms. So we click that. We have all the standardized ICS NIMS forms. So let's double click the 213 form. That opens this browser with a list of things to fill in here. So it's pretty obvious what it wants. So you can put training to Steve from test the date. The date will be automatically filled in if you just do an OK. Same with time. We'll do a quick test here. Approved by me. Positions, my call sign. Okay, the next thing I want to do is I want to save this file on my machine here locally. You do an OK to this text format. And this is the location for saving of your files. So we'll do a save on that. You'll notice it downloads that text file and saves it to that file path. The last thing you want to do is hit submit and then OK, and then close this screen, and you're going to have a message that's populated with all the basic information, plus it's going to have an attachment in an XML format that can be opened by the recipient, and it will generate a browser with the form inside of it with this information appended to it. Once you've got the form in the browser, you can then print that off and send it to your served agency. Very necessary thing if you're in a NIMS environment where you need to use the standardized forms. So I hope that helps you be compliant with some of your served agencies. Last, I want to thank you all for being tolerant, and thank you all for viewing this portion of the Alabama section training. This is K4TTZ. Thank you.